Hi there, and welcome back to the Fellowship of the Ring Pull. So much to catch up with. A philosophy by Bryan Cranston I'd like to talk about. There's also the whole WeTransfer thing. Have you heard about what's going on there? And some competitions of a flash competition that we did when we launched our Pocket Strings. Loads to catch up with, but first, a new credit sequence.
If you feel like you are losing your grip, might suffer a trip or abandon ship, open a can of whatever you sip and join the fellowship.
Well done, Ed Harper, again for that just fantastic theme tune. We're still working with Ed's materials to create a full audio package. There's going to be all sorts of different stings and bumpers and all of that kind of stuff. And we've also been filming the process, not least Ed visiting us up here in Edinburgh, where we took him to Castle Sound Studios to have an amazing session with some of the most amazing brass players going. I've had a couple of mad weeks, went to Denver during the hottest day in Denver ever, and then on to LA, where I've been having some really exciting meetings about some new artists' collaborations coming up. I don't know if you've heard about the WeTransfer thing, but for anyone who has used WeTransfer, you basically every other day you have to kind of accept their new terms and conditions, and I imagine they don't expect us to actually read them every time we have to use them, and it turns out they've snuck some in there, which is us agreeing to them to use everything that we upload onto WeTransfer for kind of secondary usage, not least machine learning, which has set the internet on fire. If I was an investing man, I would invest in bubble wrap, because I think we'll probably be getting back to the old shuttle drives in jiffy bags like the good old days. So it'd be very interesting to see what people's thoughts are on that. And, you know, it's made me have a real think about it's not just your service providers, it's the providers of the services to them. So it's, you know, WeTransfer, I think, uses AWS, Amazon servers. You know, when you're watching Netflix, you're actually streaming from Amazon servers. And it's the terms and conditions that are basically happening down the chain, I think, that we have to be very cautious of. We just switched to a new server for the downloads for Crow Hill. And the first thing because the deal was way, way better. The first thing I got our CTO to do was to check up on whether the reason why they were so reasonable is because maybe they had a caveat to use our stuff for machine learning, and I can confirm that that isn't the case. Those are the servers we'll be using for Piano Book, and we'll be really very much promoting the fact that we will not be doing stuff like machine learning off anything that people put up. Anyway, so that's the WeTransfer thing. Now, I was listening to a podcast because I've just finished, and I know I'm really, really late to the game here. I've just finished watching Breaking Bad, and I was, and also, what's it called? Always Call Saul? Better Call Saul. I mean, considering I watched probably about 100 episodes of it, you'd think I'd get the name right. Thank you, Simon. But I think what I was really interested by is that you had these two major series where the leading men were actually character actors, and I found that quite interesting. So I went down a Bryan Cranston rabbit hole, and he came up with a piece of philosophy on a podcast that I think absolutely nails something that we've been touching on, tiptoeing around, but I think he absolutely nails it. So I was wondering, Alan, if you could quickly run that for us to listen to. I'll talk briefly about it, and then that could also be a discussion point when we invite people to join us on the Google Meet, which again is linked in the video description down below. Over to you, Alan.
I guess 35 years ago or so, I stumbled upon a philosophy that I realized, oh, I was doing everything wrong. Um, I was thinking that an audition was a job interview, and that because I'm an actor and they're casting for a movie or a TV show or something, that's a job, and I'm going to go in to try to get something. And I realized by doing that, you're giving up your energy and you're sending it away from you. And so I thought, oh, whenever anybody wants or needs something, they don't have control. They're giving up control because they need something. They need a job. They need validation. They need something. So I thought, oh, I'm just going to hold on to that. And I'm not going to want something. I'm going to give them something. I worked on this scene. I think I can do it, but it's their option. Here's an idea. You take it. If that works for you, fantastic. If it doesn't, we'll see you later.
I think he absolutely nails what I think I have done wrong for most of my professional career. Going into every job interview or every pitch situation going, I really need this. I really want this. As opposed to, what can I offer? What can I give that they want or indeed need? It sounds like a subtle and nuanced way of approaching it, but it's not. It is fundamentally an 180-degree turn on the dynamic of those conversations. And I think that we have touched on and we have experienced over the last couple of years setting up Crow Hill, lots of advances from people going, I want to come and work for you. Why don't you guys fly me out? It would be great for me to work for you. As opposed to people coming and going, I think that you need help here, and this is how I can help you. Now, Simon, who is our head of network and also the moderator on these podcasts, Simon just approached me and said, listen, it's quite clear that you need some help here. I'm happy to help. And is now working full-time for Crow Hill. The same happened with Oliver Patrice Vader. He said, you look terrible. How can I help? I can come in when you're sleeping and this, that, and the other. I think these are fairly, light examples. But when it comes to creativity and pitching, I can safely say that the gigs that I've got of late that I'm really comfortable with, and the gigs that I also really excelled at, starting all the way back 10 years ago to Alien Isolation, was, I think, the first time I really nailed a pitch. And it wasn't because I really wanted it. I've never been as into computer games as my brother Joe, who's hugely successful in that field, but felt that we could really bring something different to the equation and voiced that this is what interested me in the project, which meant that I approached it not begging, not asking, but saying, this is how I would like to do it in order for me to basically deliver you my best work. The same was of this massive project that I'm not allowed to talk about, which is quite frustrating because they don't seem to want to put it on air. But this 2-year-long project that I did, that I knew because of that commitment, well, I don't want to have to go to London all the time to record musicians. So I'm going to pitch them the idea of creating a John Williams score, but played by folk musicians. And sure enough, not only did that facilitate me having the correct kind of work-life balance and not having to commute too much, but also it kept my interest for 2 years. And, I would say there's a few jobs recently that I have done where I've kind of gone, well, I've done this kind of stuff before. I'm worried that I'm going to have all of those problems that you have when you can't hold your interest and the procrastination comes in and all of these kind of things. So how can I hold my interest to guarantee that they get the best out of me and then offer that up as the solution they may be looking for? And if it's not, then you know that you're not just playing to win a pitch, you're playing to deliver something that they need. Because as Bryan Cranston says, they're giving up control. So I'd very much be interested to hear what you think about this. whether you've had those kind of epiphanies when it comes to working as a freelancer, and if there is any words in your ears or moments where a new philosophy presents itself that changes fundamentally your attitude to work. But I'm probably going to put a transcript of what Bryan Cranston says up on the wall. And I think before going into any meeting about getting a job, it's about giving some work and turning that on its head. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And it's just one of those podcasts where, he kind of said it and then they started nattering about SNL and stuff. But I was like, no, the way he's put it is absolutely genius. So there we go. So coming up, we've got some competition winners for this flash competition that we ran on Pocket Strings. We'd love to hear what you think of that stuff as well. Also want to talk about WeTransfer. What do you think about this kind of stuff? We've got a new Volt bridge guitar, and there's going to be a little bit of a composer challenge on that. Is there anyone waiting online to join us, guys, or have we been forgotten about? Oh, I can see people. Hey, there's Jay. How you doing, sir? You all right? Feels like an age.
I know, right? Yeah. I've been busy. Good things. I've been busy. I cannot talk about it. Got a project coming up with Mark, so that's a thing. And yeah,
brilliant, fantastic. And Iago, I can see you've bunked off work again. Is that correct? Oh, we can't hear you. Your mic's on mute. Iago, you need to unmute your microphone on the...
You guys can hear me?
Oh,
yes?
Yeah, there. Yeah, great.
All right. My work just resumes in the next week. So my last week of having to be out of work. So that's going to work anyway. Yeah. Just cheering up here.
Fantastic. I thought of you when we released this thing called Pocket Strings. Iago said something that was really profound to me, that the just our vertical upright piano product that we made. And again, I don't like to dwell too much on the kind of commercial aspects of Crowhill here, but I think it's an important thing to raise that just the vertical upright is an average month's wages in Brazil, a country of 200 million people. And I hope that we're getting closer to being more accessible with our Pocket Strings. It's as low as we could go on that. I don't know if you agree or you think that it was a good idea or...
Well, it's amazing. The price from what it delivers and the content as well, in the way it's presented and everything. I guess it's a good price point for us here. And depending on the situation, of course, I know for the future that things gonna improve anyway from our side of things as well. So that's gonna work. It's a good price, and it's an awesome product. I just just a quick mention. I was hoping to get for some time now the Dot Allison thing, and just got it. It's amazing. Thank you for that amazing sound. It's really nice, yeah.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Thanks a lot. I don't know if you saw my my opening waffle, but I found this wonderful quote from Bryan Cranston about, turning pitching or interviewing for jobs on its head, and it's not about getting a job, it's about giving people some work, particularly if you're a freelancer. And I would love your thoughts on that. But also, if anyone has heard about this WeTransfer debacle, which is, I think that if they're allowed to get away with that, I think that is basically going to set the internet on fire. Interesting developments there. Jeremiah, it's lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I'm just parked in an alley because I'm working my job.
I was going to say I
yeah,
probably have a duty of care and would say, could you please pull over whilst...
I'm in an alley.
Something I have to say, I've just returned from LA. Waymos, fucking hell. Just like... And I think the genius move was putting really good hi-fis in those Jaguars, because we were just pumping away, knowing that we weren't going to distract the driver. Yeah, absolutely crazy. I would not be happy if I was a truck driver, though, because I think that profession is gone within the next 5 years. I really do. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about, Jeremiah. How's things with you?
Yeah, luckily I'm not a truck driver, but things are good. Things are good. It's sunny out here. I'm going on vacation in this next week, so I'm looking forward to that, and I'm just living life. I had an idea though with your mention of the Bryan Cranston quote, and I really like this thought because I have this. Maybe it was my upbringing. I don't know, but I have this frustration that sometimes happens when I don't get something. I think we kind of all might feel that some way or another. And it's not like I'm upset at the person. I'm just like, shit, why didn't I get that thing? And it might be an audition or like, a thing on, I don't know, Craigslist that I wanted. And, someone gets it first. And since I started joining these and participating in these composer challenges, I kind of reframe that with like that similar Bryan Cranston thought. It wasn't even the mention of that convention that you spoke at and you were approached and asked if you could get some help. It was actually these composer challenges where it really took root with me when I said, it doesn't really matter if I get whatever I'm getting. I'm trying something new. I'm putting myself out there, and I'm getting a lot more out of that experience than I could ever get from a prize. And that is so valuable for me to experience that growth and force myself to try new things. So I think it's just like, that's kind of just the thought I wanted to put out there with that idea is I love Bryan Cranston. I think he says some wonderful things, but it's almost sometimes for me until I actually put myself in a experience that I begin to dissolve those into my bloodstream, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I agree, Jeremiah. It's kind of having to understand it, isn't it? And I suspect that kind of philosophy could only come from a character actor, not a leading man, even though he was a leading man in Breaking Bad. And there is a very much, and I imagine Charles will comment on this, there is very much a difference between leading actors and character actors. It's almost like a different job. It's a little bit like mix engineers and live engineers. It's a different approach, but I think very, very useful. I think one of the most dangerous things that I started getting slightly addicted to was just winning gigs, and then not thinking about whether I wanted to do them or not. I know that for people who are starting out, that may sound just, I don't know, incredibly crass that I would take a job that I hadn't thought about, whether I wanted to do or not, or rather whether I could really bring something to it. And the number of times I've done jobs and just couldn't work out why my music wasn't gelling. I guess also jobs that I've been fired off. And I realised it's because it held no interest for me. I wasn't stimulating myself in my own work. And I think that's it's almost like getting ahead of yourself. You've got to go into those interviews going, how can I create an opportunity to give these people my best work? Because that's the most kind of longevist way of approaching things and the most scalable, I guess. And back to you, Iago.
All right. I'm going to tell a story about exactly the situation with Bryan Cranston and everything. I tried some time ago, 2 years ago, of getting a job at a place, and I just went to the interviews, and I kind of knew the heads of the company some sort of way, and tried to talk with them about my work and how should I do things and everything. They politely responded the way companies often do, reviewing the application and everything. And you fast forward 2 years from then. I was attending at an artist that I didn't even knew at the time. I was working with them, producing for the day, and I was going really fast because I really knew well that studio that I was working at that day. So working really fast, and there were two guys in the back of the room, and they came to talk to me, and they said, "Okay, this is really good, the thing that you're doing here, recording the people and producing, you know. Could you send us an email or whatever thing?" I said, "Okay," just pass the context to the guy. And lo and behold, it was the same company that they did not review my application. So it's interesting. Sometimes I was actively looking for the thing, but saying the wrong things, as you said in the beginning. But when they had the opportunity for me to show what I can bring to the table in the sense of what I'm doing, producing and recording and everything, and they saw that happening, it totally changes the perspective. And now, at that time, I gather I wasn't maybe ready for pitching it the right way. Just as Kent said, so the way of speaking with the person that you wanted to speak is really, really important. You need to show them the solution of a problem and not maybe the overall thing. Anyway, I don't know if this story works or resonates, but it's the way I think about the subject anyway.
Yeah, and I think that one of the real lessons of what you learnt there is don't burn your bridges. You know, so often it might be a specific gig, it may come back, you know, and that has happened to me more than one time. And it's about, you know, I know people who are who feel they put a lot of effort into a pitch and are quite demanding to demand from people, I want a report to why I didn't get the job. And it's like, you're not sending out the right vibes there. You've just got to be very graceful and really wish them the best and mean it. And say, listen, you know where I am if you need me. But I also think there is something just very basic and human about coming up with an idea of some goods, and then people having to go, well, listen, I don't want those. There's always a potential point in the future where people go, you know, that idea that person has, you know, how many times have we gone from version 1 to version 12 only to end up with version 1? So I think it's, again, it's the long game. And I know that's so difficult when you're hungry and desperate and all of those kind of things. But that hunger and desperation should manifest, it's not desperation, that hunger should manifest itself in a drive to do something really amazing and not to return to the hunger as opposed to just quench your immediate needs. Moya, I'll come to you in a moment, but I know that Jeremiah's just come back and I think Jeremiah's got to go back to work. But Jeremiah, I just mentioned that YouTube. Do you want to talk about that a bit so we can plug your channel?
Yeah. Hey, thanks. The Canadian me wants to apologize. My phone was like, I'm getting too hot, man. I can't handle this internet thing. So, anywho, I appreciate you reaching out about that. Yeah, this Venom thing kind of sparked it in me, and I thought, you know, how can I spread myself out a little more, make myself a little more interesting, a little more interested, and try something new again? So I thought, let's start a YouTube channel. I did a little pocket strings demo, and made a little kind of like Cure-esque song, I think. And I've got some ideas. Who's to say how fast they'll unfold on that channel? But if you want to give me a look and follow along, I had a little fun idea, and I'll see how long it takes me to manifest this. But long story short, my grandparents, my Oma and Opa, were the start of the German media here in Vancouver back in the mid 1900s. And so they brought their sort of interests over here to Vancouver, started a newspaper and a radio. And I've got some of my Opa's old, really shit mics. And I thought it'd be fun to share a bit of my family history and bring those mics into some videos and see if I can use them to maybe sample some interesting stuff over time. So I've got lots of ideas now that this avenue has opened up. And if anyone has anything they want to see in that respect or collaborate, I'm super game to just try stuff. I just want to be better and give people something that sometimes you can't find on the internet, hopefully. That's my goal. So
please, everyone, go and subscribe and like and all of that kind of stuff. But what you're mentioning, tying that in with the Cranston philosophy, is, yeah, I mean, getting invited into a meeting or to pitch something, you know, and using that opportunity to present some ideas and to say what you can offer to a particular job is one of the ways of embracing that philosophy. But naturally, getting to the point where you can get through that door can be very difficult. And something I've always maintained is YouTube is an excellent way of presenting some ideas that you may have that people may want. And people do get hired from being found on the internet. And also, you know, what I've experienced is when it comes down to two of you, if the director feels that they know you, it's just basic human instinct to go, well, I don't know, there's a kind of toss up between these two, but, you know, he seems like an okay dude. Moy, over to you.
When you come to the United States, you have so many jobs that, you know, until you find something that you want to do. But with that, you know, my experience was when I completely gave up on music industry and doing all these things, I met this guy. He was a judo fighter, judo and jiu-jitsu. And, you know, he introduced me to someone who wanted to put out like a short film. And we ended up working on this short film. And, you know, it was like 16 minutes. So we actually ended up breaking a world record of 1,200 awards. So for, you know, best music, for best actor, for best short film, you know, best cinematography. So it's like, when you're about to give up, you meet that certain person that's going to take you to the next level. But it's just in that mindset, just, you know, going forward without giving up is very difficult. For me, that was, you know, very difficult. And then you have the aspect of the YouTube. You know, YouTube is fine and all that. You gain like 31 million views over the years, but, you know, it's a specific thing. If you're talking about religion, you have to stick with religion. If you're talking about music, you know, have to, you know, stick with music. If you bring other stuff, people stop watching. So that makes it very difficult to just, you know, adjust. Maybe someone has an idea how you can, you know, bring the, you know, different subjects in one channel so you can, you know, actually survive in this thing.
Lee, sorry for keeping you waiting so long. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Can you hear me okay? Okay, brilliant. So yeah, I definitely second what everyone else has been saying. And I'll start by mentioning the plugin, the new pocket strings. That's very useful and great to use. And I second what Jeremiah said as well about the challenges. This one in particular with the time limit, it really made me think again about the way that I work and how much I can do in a short space of time. And I think it's good to push yourself sometimes, and it's really helped me to realize how much you can get rid of those little mini procrastinations that you have, where you spend about 2 or 3 minutes thinking about something that you can just get on with. And the point about having a different attitude in terms of approaching people for interviews, that one's an interesting one because as someone who's trying to establish myself at the moment and begin the process of working in music a little bit more. I'm a bit more used to other industries, a lot of admin jobs and things like that. And it's quite a jump to go from the attitude of trying to make yourself fit with what they want and actually offering something and saying, here's what I can offer. Because if you have that attitude with a lot of industries, then they won't touch you with a barge pole because they're not interested in that. They think you're too much of an upstart. So I wondered what you and more established people in the network thought about how do you go about developing the confidence to push yourself forward a bit like that and just say, hey, look, I can offer this, and or even get to the point of thinking to yourself, what could you offer, and that kind of thing. And I wonder how you went about that, and did other people encourage you, that kind of thing, and is it a good idea to network, that kind of stuff. So that's what I was curious about.
Thanks for that, Lee. Yeah, I've certainly fallen foul of poor use of language. I nearly didn't get a really big gig that the director really wanted me to do, but the producers were terrified because I kept on saying, I think quite an avant-garde approach to, the sound design and the production would really, make this, really help the story along. Not realizing that they associated avant-garde with 12-tone second Viennese music, and it was a children's movie. So I think you have to be careful about that, and it's like someone going, I'm really interested in an Italian meal. How would you cook an Italian meal for me? And then turning around going, well, I think you should have Chinese. I think it's about tinctures and ingredients, and I guess it's about finding a USP. So it's within the confines, and this is the I think one of the hardest things to learn to do is working to brief. It's working to brief to help tell the story in a way that is appropriate for the story, whilst also finding a unique angle that maybe just puts you a little bit above the people that you're competing with. I thank you for your comments on Pocket Strings. And I think this is probably just a nice opportunity for us to play. We've got 3 honourable mentions. Actually, we've got 2 honourable mentions and 1 winner. We're going to start with someone who's a very familiar name and someone I met in person recently. Ed Harper has again hit it out of the park with a piece that he created with Pocket Strings. The rule was all you're allowed to use is Pocket Strings. So here we go on that. Brilliant. I think what I really liked about that, which felt fresh to me, was the really interesting use of microtuning. I wanted to because I've been working with string libraries for nearly 30 years now and making them, I wanted to be so bold as to just offer some feedback on these demos, if I may. And there's something that I find kind of quite interesting about people's attitude to reverb, and that is that it almost feels like people, it's almost like sugar in a hot drink. It's like, I should only really have two. Whereas actually, where reverb is concerned, you should fill your coffee cup up with sugar until the spoon stands up on one end. If you were to listen to Blade Runner's, the original Vangelis score, I think the actual inspiration for that score was the recent arrival of the Lexicon, I can't remember the code name of it, but the Lexicon digital reverbs, which suddenly enabled people to have these huge decays. Up to that point, you're dealing with delays, springs, chambers, plates, that kind of stuff. But if you listen to that Blade Runner score, it is just immense amounts of reverb, if not 100% reverb. And it's just something that I would really humbly encourage people not to feel by looking at a knob, that's too much, or I shouldn't really go over 50% mix and dry and wet. Go up to 90%, go up to 100%. It's not like sugar in your coffee. It's not going to kill you. So that would be my comment on that. I would have just piled the reverb on. But yeah, as I said, I really, really like the micro tuning. I don't know, Ed, if you're familiar with a composer called Barry Guy, who this is a great track actually, or a great piece, if you guys want to check out. It's called After the Rain, and I think it is on most music servers. After the Rain by Barry Guy, a sensational piece of music that uses all sorts of kind of micro tuning and Baroque motifs, some great long glissandi. But also, what's great about Barry is he's a concert bass player, so it's written with a lot of basses in mind. Ed, if I were you, just whack up the reverb, and there's plenty of reverb on the plugin there. There's a thing they say about Hans Zimmer is he'll never respond to an email unless it's about sampling, and he'll always respond to an email about sampling. I think for me, it's about splosh. I'm fascinated by it. But the fact of the matter is, when you're watching an orchestra, you are hearing 80% early reflection. You're hearing 80% room. You're not sitting on the stage with the musicians. You're not standing where the conductor is standing. And I think that whenever you're working with samples, whatever you're doing is multiplied. And if you're multiplying a scenario that is not real life, it becomes like a 10 or 100-fold situation. And that's why I think reverbs are really important. I've worked with some of the best orchestral mix engineers in the world. And I'm talking, some of them are putting 6, 7 different reverbs on top of different buses. And sure, they're, and what they're doing is they're EQing the tails and all of this kind of stuff. But it just gives you a sense of place. I think the other thing to remember as well, I know until I'm blue in the face, but the other thing that happens is with film, things are going behind dialogue, things are going behind room tone, things are going behind sound effects. And the net effect of that, particularly if the music is ducked, is that you lose all the top end. You lose the sibilance in your music. And the biggest area where you hear reverb is in the sibilance. So you do, I believe, you do have to go a little bit overboard for sound to picture, which is why usually when I'm mixing soundtrack albums, I literally have to come back into the studio to take the reverb back about 30%, because it just ends up sounding really, really dry. Those are my thoughts on reverb. But I'm with you, Jay, on as many compressors as it needs. And I'd like to add to what you were saying, as long as it sounds good. For me, it's as long as it feels good. And that is a key thing for me as well. You look at someone like Bootsy Collins, who has 4 outputs from his bass guitar, and he puts them into these convoluted EQ, FX chains. And you're like, is that really necessary? It's like, well, it's how you get the performance out of him. It makes him react in a certain way. And I think that we don't talk about feeling enough when it comes to the business of sound. Back to you, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things there. I wanted to address the reverb conversation as well, because I mean, okay, so months ago I got laid off, and now I'm obviously doing something different. And in that time, I spent like a good amount of my hours recontextualizing the tools I was using in audio, and that revitalized some of my sparks and everything, and got me on a new track. And what I'm bringing that up for is it gave me new context for compression and what reverb it can do, or how you can use it, or how do I frame it? It doesn't really matter. But I guess my point is, I was for so long not really considering how imperative creating space is with reverb. I was using it for so long as like, this is the sound I'm going for. And sure, that is useful, but it wasn't until I started taking these compression tools and reverb and delays into a different headspace that I realized I'm creating an environment, and the environment might be more so, sorry, some people passing by. That environment might be, the reverb might be necessary to build an environment. And the environment is sometimes what's the most important, I'd say arguably for me now, most important just generally in creating sound, because you're putting someone in a space. And how else do you do it than combining a bunch of different spaces that someone has professionally tailored for you? And I think that's been so fascinating, that journey, that just one reverb, or in my case, I usually use like 5 returns now of reverb, and I mix them differently for each instrument. And that is building this environment out of sometimes really fake sounding instruments. I mean, I could go off on this, I just probably am, but it's exciting. It's a really thrilling thing to learn those fundamentals, break them, and then relearn them, because I feel like reverb and delay, especially for me recently, have been so imperative, not just creating this big splosh of sound, but to just give someone a world to encompass themselves in differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that there has been this trend of kind of scorning use of reverb, and then again you go back to these classic scores, and it's just, it's a sense of place, a sense of scale. But you're talking about the engineers that I've worked with who are, they're not just slapping them on insert buses. They're riding these things all the time to create. And again, it's not always just about sound. It's about feeling. It's like, this needs to feel wider. This needs to feel closer. And I think that it's a really important consideration. And again, it's not like sugar in your tea. We're already working in a cake shop, I think this is a good opportunity to maybe have a listen to, and I don't think Ellery's here today, but we wanted to do an honourable mention to Ellery, who is our second honourable mention for this kind of flash pocket strings challenge that we set. So let's have a listen to what Ellery has done. Lovely. Now that's the kind of excuse me, splosh I'm talking about. Maybe it's because Ellery lives coastal. She's not scared of the wateriness. I really enjoyed that. And again, Ellery, if I may be so bold, and this is just based on having done this for so many years, and my experience of actually being very fortunate to work with string players. I won't bore you with the details of it, but basically I spent about 10 years when I was with Spitfire trying to get string players to simply stop playing, like to stop dead. And after about 10 years of this and kind of getting the samples back and going, oh, they did it for a couple of minutes and then they just stopping dead. You will never, ever have string players stop dead. They will always dim their note, diminuendo. It's something to do with the way they're trained, the way they're conditioned, that it's always about reducing the amount of vibration before stopping the note. So my one comment about your beautiful piece is that there are notes that just stop. And what I would advise doing, even if they're part of pads, is separating those tracks off. So where you do have exposed lines, that you actually fade the end of every note, not legatos, not when they're moving between notes, but when they're ending notes. A string player will never, ever stop dead. And I'm going to be doing loads of tutorials coming up about all of this stuff, because I think one of the key things to programming isn't about like your speed on a mouse or your chops. It's actually about empathy with the instruments. And even though a violin can do that, they won't. And what we are as humans, because we're so sensitive with our hearing, what we're really familiar with is what kind of tells us what things are real and what are human and what don't kind of take us out of the landscape, the watery landscape that you have created. So that's something I remember being scolded quite heavily by an engineer about, that the fact that I just would stop notes and that would never happen. So that would be my tip on that. Something I was going to mention on these 3 tracks, if you wanted me to do a quick masterclass with you, maybe you can come in on a Zoom call or a Google Meet. If you want to send me the DAW files, and if you don't mind being filmed, I think it would be helpful for the whole group to show people how I would maybe just finesse what it is that you have done, not based on me thinking that I'm better or a better composer or anything like that, but just simply being in this kind of rare situation of having worked with sample libraries as a composer, made sample libraries, and worked with a lot of string players, because there are these little kind of traps that I hear people falling into. Merlin, it's lovely to see you.
Hey, Chris. Hey, everybody. Nice to see you guys. I've really missed this. I'm still stranded in Portugal. Not sure how much longer, but I guess I'm going to find out sooner or later. I also, Kent, wanted to actually comment on the reverb thing, because I think one of the hardest lessons that I keep relearning about reverb is that there's, in my mind, at least 2 approaches to reverb. One is the one that I feel like is what we're all saying here, which is that it's not coming from a mixing perspective. It's coming from a creative perspective, like what you said, Christian, about feeling, right? Like reverb is great to create feeling, to create space, and to kind of use it, as a creative tool. But I think the lesson that I keep falling into is that I lean on that too heavily, and I forget all the like psychoacoustic training that I made myself go through, where it's so much about the perception of music for people who aren't musicians. They're kind of unconscious or half conscious, and so I tend to have basically like an inconsistent space in some of my tracks where I use different reverbs, but then it just form a cohesive whole spatially, and that's not something that a normal listener will like consciously pick up, but it will kind of sometimes tear the music apart. And this is like what I have some good music friends for, because they often give me that kind of feedback, because I know this, but then when I'm writing, I'm too close to the track and I forget that that's what's happening, and I'm just in the feeling world of it. So I think it's like the interesting thing about reverb, and probably a couple of other ways that we affect audio, is to find this kind of balance between, you know, between creatively using it, maybe intentionally breaking the rule when it works, but also kind of double checking to be like, well, if I'm intentionally breaking the rule, does it still give a listener a cohesive experience that makes sense for them? Even if it's breaking the rules, then it needs to be so intentional that people are like, oh, that's cool, here it's dry, here's wet, or something like that, you know? So I think it's a very like tricky balance to walk, but I agree very much with Jeremiah, where it's like, I feel like reverb is one of those tools that's like, you know, an iterative process. Like every time you focus more on it, you learn something new, and then that can give you new ideas and new creative input.
Thank you for that, Merlin. I totally agree. I think one of the, I don't want to sound like an old codger here, but one of the things that I've witnessed and very much guilty of with as technology is advanced is the use of insert buses as opposed to send buses. You know, back in the day, I remember we'd hire in an extra TC6000 to give us 3 different reverbs that we could use on stems. We'd hire in Manleys, all of this kind of stuff, and you'd send them down these precious buses, and you know, you'd be conscientious of what was going in and what was coming back, and then when it went into the box, reverbs were always the ones that would make our machines fall over. So again, we'd set up these quite complicated effects loops in the box. But I think, you know, over the last 5 to 10 years, because of the power of computers, you can now stick a reverb on every single track. And I think that there is this, and it's basic human nature. If you've got 700 plugins, you're going to set and forget. And I think that what we forget, and the reason why a lot of this technology evolved from flying faders, you know, from having all of the band and the guitarist turning the guitar up when you were doing the final mix down, to having flying faders, to creating automation, was that we knew that in order to create a record of a performance, that we had to recreate the effects on our environment and stuff, and it's as much about contrast as anything. Talking of contrast, have you guys heard the latest Muse track? I'm not a massive Muse fan, but that track is mixing and mastering alchemy. Well worth listening to. I can't remember. Maybe Simon or Alan, you could check out the name of the track, but it's all about contrast, and it's about contrast in very different and surprising ways. So it starts kind of quite EDM, it goes quite trashy, it goes like super like heavy metal, and then it goes back to EDM, and they're all of these different kind of chapters within the song have a dynamism and a power of their own. But it's really interesting to go, okay, drums are this loud here. Drums you can barely hear here. And I think it's a real lesson in how these things are absolutely sculpted. And I do feel that engineering for a lot of composers is an Achilles heel for us. And I think that one of the wonderful things that technology allows us to do is to use engineering and production as part of our compositional process, and not just to whack something on, bit of EQ, set and forget. Les, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, very well. I was interested in the reverb conversation, and I really loved Ellery's piece. That was very nice. I did go down the rabbit hole of impulse responses, which was quite interesting. Where there's a few areas that I know from places I work. 3 of them are various sized chapels, and they have a really lovely reverb tail. So I took a recorder and did some impulse responses and put them into the convolution reverb in Reaper and use those. But it's an interesting sort of way of playing with reverb, where you can actually get something that is yours, the space you know or have used, in a different way, and it becomes a whole new instrument, just as an idea to chuck into the mix, really.
Absolutely, and then there's ways of using convolution reverb so creatively. I have a personal view on composing with convolutions. I got Altiverb a while back, and I just found myself getting very, very tired of it, and I couldn't figure it out. And I realized it was because you were pinging the same sample over and over and over and over again. There's no way you can hear it, but I think subconsciously you are effectively getting a machine gunning effect, a non-round robin of the same room being stimulated the same way. So when I'm writing composition, I'll use convolutions for mixing. But when I'm writing, I always go with an algorithmic reverb. I used to love the VSS3 by TC. And I'm a big fan, as I've always said, of the Fab filter. It's interesting. Logic have brought out a new IR thing that sounds good, but I just get very, very tired of it. You can hear the character, and the character is identical time and time again. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that. So what I'm going to do is maybe I think what would be fun would be to talk about, we've released a new vault today, which is called the bridge guitar, which is this new trend that seems to be, on our airwaves at the moment, of a way of muting the bridge to create an effect that's quite beautiful. It still has the kind of beauty of the guitar, but almost turns it into a pizzicato kind of sound. And I was thinking, what would be an interesting kind of challenge? And as always with these challenges, it's about those kind of horrific real-world briefs. And basically, I would like to think that I am a client who is recreating a reality show from the early noughties and loves the music that we had in the early noughties, but is a bit bored of pizzicato. So I was wondering if we could come up with maybe 30 seconds to a minute of reality TV _ a bed that maybe uses the bridge guitar and maybe pizzicatos or something else to create the same effect that those pizzicato strings that we heard on daytime television for about 10 years. I think it started with 6 Feet Under, if I recall correctly, to see if we can get a fresh approach to the pluck. So that's going to be the new challenge. And Simon will be putting up a post regarding that probably tomorrow, won't we? As always with these things, join the conversation on thecrowhillcompany.com, our forum, and also our mailing list. We try not to spam. We will occasionally, because that's how we survive, tell you of new products. But first and foremost, it's about telling you about these opportunities. So I'm really pleased to announce the winner of this flash challenge that we did with Pocket Strings, who will be winning the next two releases from Crow Hill. And there's some really exciting stuff coming down the pipe, by the way. And the winner goes to Florian Givo. So let's have a listen to this. brilliant stuff, Florian, and congratulations on that. I would love to have a go on these arrangements. Ed, Ellery, Florian, if you wanted to have a quick, I wouldn't call it a masterclass, just a old codger class with me, I'd be delighted to grab your arrangements. Florian, I think that there's a way of making that arrangement like mind-blowing. And there's a few tricks I'd love to show you about how to join those notes up when you don't have legato articulations. Merlin, can I come to you briefly and then we'll end with Charles?
Absolutely. Quick comment on Florian's piece. I absolutely loved that. I think this is like such wonderful, playful writing, very whimsical. It made me immediately think of like a Wes Allen movie or something like that. So I love when a piece like, for me, transports me into a particular scene or style right away. But to your thing that you were saying, I think in terms of the quote that you mentioned, what I really like about this approach is that I think it's really necessary for, our or like a lot of freelance industries to kind of stay healthy, that we don't only take the approach of being a tool to be used, so to speak, in terms of tailoring to, what somebody is like looking for. And I think the way that this quote suggests, bringing something that makes you excited and therefore also having a bit more initiative might be like a really helpful way to maintain that sort of attitude. Because in the end of the day, we all, are looking for gigs. And yes, it's, for a lot of us, it's about also putting bread on the table. And so there's a certain kind of pressure and maybe a tendency to, relent some of our desire or be more compromising with our own values or ethics if we want the gig because we need to pay the bills. But I think that it's easy to fall into that too much. And an approach like this, where you're actively looking at gigs and trying to think about, oh, why would I really want this? And how can I like bring that into my, my way of pitching for this? That sounds to me like a great way of putting a bit more of yourself into it and maintaining your creativity, not just being in big quotation marks, a craftsperson in this sense.
I think that's a very good point, Merlin. And I use this quote ad nauseum on this channel, but the Frank Zappa thing, talking about music's like dancing about architecture. I think that you need to live it where directors are concerned. By going into a room and saying, so what were you thinking musically? You're basically going, could you please perform a solo on point about the Pompidou Centre? It is as alien to them as that suggestion. And I think coming in, and so often when you it's what Bryan Cranston talks about, when you create a vacuum, they fill it with really stupid fucking ideas. I remember going into a meeting thinking, oh, this director, I'm just going to ask him. Yeah, I was like learning the ropes still. I said, so what were you thinking? And he was like, oh, I don't know. Banjos? And it's like, it was a period drama set in England, in the Georgian era. And it's like, there's just, you definitely don't mean that. But now you've said it, I think you want to mean it. So those are my thoughts. Charles has had his few shares of directors over the years, both as a composer, musician, and as an actor. Over to you, Charles. It's lovely to see you.
Lovely to be seen. I really have a précis about the Cranston thing. Number one, this goes for all of us as writers. You take into the room what you do from the brief, or as an actor, you have a part, you read the size, is the little script. And then you either get the job or you don't. And this is the saving grace that I would suggest to all of you. Don't take it personally if you don't get the job, and don't take it personally if you do get the job. You just take what you are into the place, and the chips will fall sometimes in your favor, sometimes not. I've actually left the business because of an audition. It was the last time I auditioned for television because the writing in the script, I might have told this story before and then I'm going to sign off. The writing was brilliant. I don't even remember what the part was. It was a senator or something. After I auditioned, it was like 2 or 3 pages with lots of dialogue. The director looked at me and he said, "Can you do that faster?" And when he said that, I thought, I've got to leave the business because I knew what I was dealing with. And if I made a mistake, that's my problem. But on the other hand, there were jobs that I got because I did exactly what I wanted to do that I saw in the script, and I got those jobs. So when you're writing music, I think it's the same thing. Unless you're writing sync music, and that's kind of a different thing, and I write a lot of that for Megatracks. That's a different field. It's like medicine. You're either a dermatologist or an orthopedic surgeon. But the real core of what I'm saying is what you do, each of you individually as a composer, take that. That's your game. If you're a designated hitter in baseball, you hit the home runs. You don't worry about playing shortstop, et cetera, and so forth. So that would be my counsel on the whole matter, and that's been my approach. And I've been very blessed in working a lot with that regard, because frankly, maybe it's my age, or maybe it's just the way I'm too Germanic or whatever. I really don't care what they think. I'm going to do it the way I want, and if they don't want it, so what? I'm still breathing when I leave the room. That's it.
Thank you, Charles. Absolutely brilliant. And I really think that what I have experienced is doing a job badly can be worse for your pocket than not doing a job at all. So trying to wrangle your way in, and I've swindled my way into jobs and then have done a terrible job with them, or I've taken jobs because I'm greedy. I think finding a reason to do a job is a really good way to walk into a room to talk to people about that job. I just want to leave with, Charles, your statement reminded me of this, and it's worth listening to if you guys haven't. There is this absolute back of the sofa horrific session with Orson Welles when he basically became a voiceover artist. He was desperate for cash because he was a pretty terrible film producer. And was always going bankrupt. I think that also, judging by his some of the stuff that you see online, there was probably a little bit of alcohol problems there. But he's in this voiceover session with a client who has said something very similar to what Charles said about, can you speed it up a bit? But it's quite sad because Orson doesn't just get up and leave because he needs the cash. But he offers one of the most withering retorts I've ever heard. I believe Charles would do a much better impersonation than me, but basically he's given a read. The client goes on, lovely Orson, I was just wondering if you can do it again, but this time put the emphasis on the word and. There's this pause, and Orson then goes, tell me, sir, from the depths of your ignorance, when in the history of mankind has the emphasis ever been put on the word and? And on that, he says, emphasizing the and, I'm going to leave you to it. Have a lovely evening, and we'll be back every week from here on out. Same time, same place. Lots of new features coming. So much love to you all, and see you very soon.
If you feel like you are losing your grip, might suffer a trip or abandon ship, open a can of whatever you sip.